Thanks for tuning into Dirty Teeth. As you can see, I'm out on a blustery cold winter fat bike ride. It's got me thinking about hand warmers. So let's go inside and talk about the ways you can use them to maximize the benefits and a bunch of my tips and hacks. All right, I took a shower, I trimmed my beard, and I'm ready to rock. These trusty little hand warmers can be a lifesaver in so many different ways, and my goal today is to explore the possibilities so you can squeeze every ounce of goodness from them for cold weather cycling, bikepacking, and beyond. I'll start with how to eke the maximum performance out of them, and then go through all the traditional and non-traditional uses and tips and tricks that I can muster up. By the way, if we haven't met yet, I'm Alan. Nice to meet you. For simplicity's sake, I'm gonna stick to discussing traditional 2-inch by 3.5-inch hand warmer packets. But toe warmers and footbed warmers and jumbo-sized body warmers all work in the same way, and there's lots of crossover, so yes, you should keep those in mind, and they can be a great call in certain situations. You don't have to be married to just hand warmers. By the way, I recently saw that Hot Hands is now making neck warmers and lap warmers and Bigfoot toe warmers. They even have something called a lava body warmer for extreme cold conditions. Anyway, since I already mentioned Hot Hands, I'll make that tip number 1. When you're purchasing hand warmers, go with a reputable brand you know and trust. For me, that's Hot Hands. I'm in no way sponsored or supported by them, just a satisfied long-term customer. If you have another brand you prefer, let us know in the comments. Over the years, I've experimented with all the name brands and the cheapy Amazon brands, which actually aren't that much cheaper, if at all, and I always come back to Hot Hands. Nothing's worse than having confidence in a pack of warmers and having certain expectations, and then they don't get that hot or they poop out after just a couple hours. These put out a ton of consistent heat and last as long as advertised. Hot Hands states a maximum temp of 158 degrees Fahrenheit or 70 degrees Celsius and an average temp of 135 degrees Fahrenheit or 57 degrees Celsius. And they'll supply this heat for up to 10 hours. They also have a nice long shelf life of 3 to 4 years, so you can definitely save yourself some money by stocking up and buying them in bulk, and you can give some out as gifts. You can keep a few extra in your pockets. You can stuff some in your buddies' pockets. I guarantee you at some point you will save somebody's day. Especially if you tend to ride with friends that show up ill-prepared, you know who you are. I've seen people futz around with hand warmer packets and really struggle to get them open. I've also seen the angry grizzly bear approach as people struggle to wildly rip them open with their teeth. There's no need for all the drama. Just use the arrows on the package and they tear open without any fuss. It's also worth noting they come in pairs, but they're packaged and sealed up individually. As you'll see when I start going over the uses, they don't always need to be used in pairs, so if you don't need both, just open one side and save the other for later. Chemical warmers will perform at their best and reach their maximum heat the fastest when you deploy them at room temperature. I know this isn't always possible, and they'll definitely still work fine if you have to open them out in the field when you're already in freezing cold conditions. When this is the case, you should keep them in an easy to access pocket on your body that keeps them nice and warm. For me, this is usually my pants pockets while fat biking in snow, so the heat coming off my thighs does the trick. And when it's time to use them, I've already got a leg up. All right, that was pretty bad. Also, if you happen to drop one in the snow, don't sweat it, it won't get ruined. Although they're not waterproof, they will continue to produce heat even while sitting in the snow, so just pick it up, blow off the snow, put it back in your pocket or wherever, and it's good to go. No matter where you are when you open them, your hand warmers will also be the most effective if you shake them up. The packs have been sitting dormant and the ingredients need to mix together to activate and start working their magic. Doing la cucaracha and flamenco dancing is my kiddo's favorite part, and probably me too. La cucaracha, la cucaracha. Some people seem to think that right after you shake them up, they'll instantly get hot just like that, but that's not the case. You also need to give them some time to heat up, so have patience. They'll start warming up pretty slowly, and usually they're pretty effective after 15 minutes, and they'll reach full blast in a half hour or so, especially if you open the pack at room temp. So whenever possible, think ahead and crack a package before heading out of the house or jumping out of your car to start a ride. And the same goes if you're out in the field. Don't procrastinate or hesitate. If you know you're going to be stopping for a bit and have tasks to handle, or if the temps are dropping and your spidey senses are going off, that it's about to get really chilly, rip them open now, because trust me, it's much harder to do when your hands are already numb, and keeping your hands warm proactively is so much easier than bringing them back to good once they've gone south. If you're using pogies, that's a great spot to stash them while they're warming up, since they're basically sleeping bags for your hands. The microclimate in there is going to be much warmer than the outside air temperature, and if I don't have pogies, then I'll put them in my jacket pockets with the zippers at least partially open. Again, this is because the chemical hand warmers need oxygen to activate and produce maximum heat. Although you'll very likely be using them in confined spaces eventually, it's always best to get them up to temp with some breathing room beforehand. And if you're using them in a way where they're not getting much air and they start to cool down or lose some of their effect, you can reintroduce them to some fresh air and they should start warming up again. I know this isn't always feasible, but sometimes it is, and people make the mistake of thinking their warmers are dead when in fact they're just suffocating. Okay, now that we've got our hand warmers working as hard as they can for us, I should slip in this quick disclaimer. I'm most likely just an idiot YouTuber, wannabe know-it-all, and although I've never had any issues or injured myself, hand warmers can be extremely hot and mess you up if not used appropriately. So use discretion and common sense, and don't burn yourself by putting them on your bare skin. With that out of the way, I'll start with putting warmers on your palms, which is the only area where direct skin contact is approved by the manufacturer. This means you can just pop them right inside your gloves, and just like that, your hands are nice and toasty. It's not ideal for gripping a handlebar, and although I've gotten used to it and it doesn't bug me too much, I usually save the direct to palm approach for when I'm off the bike. For any type of bike packing, but especially deep winter fat biking, having dexterity and touch sensitivity in your fingers is critically important to handle the menial tasks that you don't give any thought to when it's warm out. Whether you're simply pulling a buff up and down, unzipping through layers and using your hydration hose, or lighting a stove and boiling water, pumping air into your tires, even just going to the bathroom, you've got to be efficient and quick, and it really helps to be able to do all of this in thin gloves. When it's sub-zero and colder and frost nip can become real in an instant, you can bet I'm going to have hand warmers directly on my hands. My thin riding gloves are stretchy enough so I can easily ball my hand into a fist inside with the warmer in the middle so that my fingertips can instantly and directly access the heat. Then I'll just quickly pop the fingers back into the holes to do whatever I need to do, and when I'm done, they're quickly balled back into a fist. If a task only requires one hand to be in the elements, the other hand is always balled up and tucked away in my jacket pocket. Sometimes I'll alternate back and forth between hands while I'm eating or doing work like pumping my tires. Sometimes one hand just randomly feels colder than the other, and I have no problem letting that glove borrow the second warmer for a bit. I'll also consciously blow my warm breath into my hands often because A, it obviously generates heat on its own, but B, some of that air will permeate through my thin gloves and keep the warmers firing on all cylinders. Shaking them up again every once in a while helps as well, especially if you feel the heat start to wane. It's no joke, these are really hot right now. Anyway, there's lots of other stuff to go over, but these techniques have kept me safe and comfy while doing various camp chores and adding air to my tires at -45 degrees Fahrenheit. I might as well mention that during the Iditarod race, I lost one of my warm gloves on the second morning. I know, bonehead move. I was kind of nervous at first, but with good pogies and hand warmers, I made do the rest of the race with just my liner gloves. And yes, of course, if I'm not riding or actively doing chores, you can also bet the Expedition mitts are on standby as well, but that's a different rabbit hole that I've already covered in other videos. If your riding temps aren't that extreme and putting them directly inside your riding gloves isn't your thing, another option is to tape or zip tie them to your handlebars with or without pogies on. I'll admit I don't do this much, but some prefer it. And they don't have to be directly on your grips. If you have room, you can strap them inboard a bit, or if you're using bar ends, you can keep them there so your grips stay nice and comfy and you just grab a little extra heat when needed. Another option that can be especially useful if you're not using pogies is on the top of your hands. This way you don't have to worry about discomfort while gripping your bars. Your skin is pretty thin there, so I'd only do this if you can sandwich it between your liner glove and a warmer glove and not directly on the skin. Your wrists are also a great spot to warm up blood going into your hands, and it's often overlooked. If you haven't tried this before, definitely give it a shot. You can just sneak them right in at the edge of your gloves or the cuffs of your jacket, but again, direct skin contact might be a little much, so use caution. You can do a kind of half palm, half wrist thing sometimes and slide it up and down to your liking, and it's right there to slide all the way down into your glove if you need even more warmth. And like I mentioned earlier, if you do have pogies, keeping a pair floating inside is a great option. It just enhances an already warm microclimate, kind of like pouring water on the hot rocks in a sauna. Ooh, that sounds really good right now. Anyway, with the warmers floating around in there, you've always got a set heated up and ready to deploy elsewhere as different body parts get cold. Speaking of different body parts, maybe your feet tend to get cold. If so, one of my go-to spots is to put hand warmers on my shins. This could be either between the tongue of my boot and my sock, or between my warm sock and my liner sock. The principle is similar to using them on your wrists. It'll warm the blood up as it enters your feet, which can keep your toes from going numb. Sometimes your Achilles may feel tight or cold as well, especially if you're doing a lot of pushing your bike through soft, deep snow. If so, spin the warmer towards the back of your calf and down in the edge of your boot to help warm up and loosen your Achilles. I know some of you are going to ask, what about sticking hand warmers, or better yet, the purpose-made adhesive toe warmers like these ones inside your shoes or boots? In my experience, toe warmers don't last nearly as long or get nearly as hot as hand warmers. And neither of them work that well shoved deep inside your footwear where they're completely deprived of oxygen. But if you do go with toe warmers inside your boots, make sure to stick them to the top of your feet and not the bottom. When they get spent, they tend to harden up and can become very uncomfortable. How about stashing a hand warmer or two in the chest pocket of your jacket? Not only will it help keep your core warm, but if you're wearing a hydration bladder, it'll help keep the hose and nozzle from freezing, double bonus. I don't know about you, but my butt and hips tend to get cold while riding, especially fat biking on snow. And no matter how great your bike fit, after hours in the saddle, it's easy to start feeling stiffness and soreness in your lower back. So this can be a great area to stash a hand warmer or two. The warmth it provides your butt and hip area can be quite effective, and heating your lower back is just the icing on the cake. A random place that I tend to get cold during fat bike races are my elbows. I know it sounds weird, but hear me out. Ooh, the sun just popped back out. My pogies go up pretty high on my forearms, and because of this, I often choose a short sleeve mesh base layer, otherwise my forearms overheat too easily. Anyway, the short sleeve base layer leaves a gap around my elbows, and I'd hate to cut a nice Brinja base layer to 3/4 length, so hand warmers are a good option. FYI, I've cut some alpaca arm warmers down to make my own elbow warmers. If that's not enough warmth, I just pop the hand warmers right inside of the elbow warmers, and voila, problem solved. Again, everyone's different, so be careful and don't burn yourself. Another spot that can be really comforting is on the back of your neck. You can just slip one in between your buff or neck gaiter and your base layer. This is especially nice when you're deep into a long ride and your neck is feeling tender or sore. On that note, hand warmers can also be useful for muscle soreness and cramping, regardless of if you're cold or not. Maybe you've had a tough long day in the saddle and your quads are shot when you get to camp. These will offer up relief similar to a heating pad and can be used as part of your recovery while bikepacking. Just wrap them in a buff for a spare sock or something thin and apply it to your neck or your shoulders or calves or anywhere that's feeling tender. A great off-the-bike use is inside the footbox of your sleeping bag. It's an easy way to keep your toes toasty through the night, and if it's your style to let damp socks dry out in your bag with you, this will speed up the process so you're ready to start with comfy, cozy socks the next morning. In extremely cold weather, it's possible for your shifting to get sluggish, and your shifter can really get hard to push. This occurs as the grease inside the shifter thickens up due to the lower temps. If this happens, you might consider attaching a hand warmer to the shifter to get the grease back to a better working temperature range and help you shift smoothly again. One of my favorite go-tos during winter riding is to drop a hand warmer in a feed bag. On sub-freezing rides where I'm not using a hydration pack, I'll often keep a regular cycling bottle inverted in the pouch for easy access to water, and the hand warmer ensures the nozzle doesn't freeze shut. The same goes if you're using a double-walled thermos. Of course, the contents in the thermos will stay warm, but moisture on the rim where you sip from and/or the flip top or straw assembly can freeze your thermos shut and render it useless easier than you think. Again, dropping a warmer at the bottom of your bottle bag and keeping the thermos upside down will keep this from occurring. Another hack is to thaw out a frozen hydration bladder, hose, or nozzle. It doesn't matter if you run your hose under your armpit and you blow back after every sip. And even if you have a warmer in your chest pocket, like I mentioned earlier, if it's cold enough and if just once you forget to sip every few minutes, it is very possible to get an ice blockage in your hose or freeze the nozzle. So if you don't want to shove it in your armpit or your crotch to melt it out, just fix a hand warmer around it and you'll be sipping pretty in no time. Water filters like the Sawyer Squeeze or the Be Free are super popular and they work very well in the right conditions. But they employ a hollow fiber membrane that will be compromised if it freezes at all, even just once and for a short time. So if you're facing any situation where this becomes a concern, consider snugging it up to a hand warmer for some peace of mind. As we all know, devices like your phone or a GoPro and power banks and spare batteries, etc., all tend to act up and perform worse in cold conditions. Again, hand warmers can come in handy. Again, chemical warmers can come in handy to keep your electronics alive longer without malfunctioning in freezing weather. If you keep snacks in a top tube bag, the same goes for them. Toss a hand warmer in there and stop your treats from freezing rock solid and becoming impossible to chew. Just don't mindlessly grab a handful of warmer and bite into it accidentally. That wouldn't be good. If you're carrying a canister stove and attempt to use it when temps drop below freezing, you might be in for a rude awakening. Butane gas or butane propane mixes found in canisters like these struggle to vaporize as the cans get cold and the pressure inside them drops. Even if you get your stove lit, you'll notice your flames start to weaken or fizzle, or it can even go out completely. A simple and effective way to combat this is similar to keeping your water filter from freezing. Before attempting to light my stove, I'll hide a hand warmer in the convenient little concave bottom of the canister. Ooh, that's hot. And then I'll stick it in my pocket for a bit so it gets nice and warm. And once I light my stove, I continue to leave the warmer sandwiched between the canister and the reflective foil base. And before you say it, I know what you're thinking. Yes, a white gas stove is the correct choice when you know you're going to be traveling in sub-freezing conditions. But sometimes you're out bikepacking in milder weather and the temperatures suddenly drop and a super cold night catches you off guard and everything's frosted over when you pop your head out of your tent in the morning. We've all been there, so yeah. Since you made it this far, I'll share my weirdest and most embarrassing emergency use for chemical hand warmers. I'll spare you the details for now because I am putting together a video showcasing my most epic bikepacking fails and mistakes, and this will most certainly be featured. Anywho, while riding my bike on the Iditarod, I managed to leak a bunch of liquid from my hydration bladder directly into my pants, soaking my crotch and private parts area before I realized what was happening. And with temps below zero, it didn't take long to freeze my underwear and the front of my pants into a sheet of ice. Long story short, I strategically placed a couple hand warmers down there, along with a buff to act as an insulator and a barrier to the ice and wind, and I kept riding. The ice started melting pretty quickly, and within a few hours, the area had mostly dried out and frostbite was avoided, thank goodness. This is a true testament to the power of hand warmers. I want to remind you that while chemical hand warmers are disposable and biodegradable, they're also often reusable. You can get 8 to 10 hours out of them, and it doesn't have to all be in one go, so it would be a waste to use them for only a couple hours and then toss them out. Remember, they need oxygen to activate, so after a ride, I usually store them in a Ziploc and squeeze all the air out before I seal it up. The warmers go dormant until I need them again, and they'll wake back up when re-exposed to air. I also write on the bag with a Sharpie so I know how long I use them and approximately how much life they have left. One of my viewers commented that he uses a vacuum sealer to achieve the same effect, and airtight bottles like ball jars will also work as well. With that said, I hope this video has gotten you thinking about hand warmers a little differently than you may have in the past. Obviously, this list isn't exhaustive, it's just a tip of the iceberg conversation starter. And we all want to know other cool and creative uses you found for these little magical packets, so please share your best hand warmer tips, tricks, hacks, and uses in the comment section so we can all learn together. Other than that, please consider subscribing to the channel to help me hit a short-term goal of 20,000 subscribers, and don't be afraid to like and share this video if you enjoyed it. Thank you to our sustaining Patreon and YouTube channel members. You are the lifeblood of this channel, and if you want more info on helping us in those ways, check the description. Until next time, ride bikes, give back, pay it forward. Thanks so much for squeezing dirty teeth into your busy schedule. Please help us reach more people and ensure you receive new videos by giving this video a like, subscribing to the channel, and clicking the notification bell. Until next time, ride bikes, give back, pay it forward. Then we spent some time watching some local sled dog races. This was a first for me. Good work. So the snow kind of let up. The sun is threatening to poke its head out. But man, we're just enjoying these freshies. It's like fat bike single track with a little duff on it. Insanely fun.